Hey everyone, my name is Catherine and I'm 58 years old. What I'm about to tell you might sound unbelievable, but every single word is true. And honestly, I'm still processing everything that happened just 3 months ago. I need to start from the beginning because you need to understand the full picture of what my life was like before everything exploded. I was married to my husband James for 32 years. We had 2 children together, my son Marcus, who's now 30, and my daughter Amy, who just turned 28. But here's the thing that's going to make you understand why what happened later was so devastating. I sacrificed everything for my family. And I mean everything. When James and I got married, I was 26 and had just finished my master's degree in business administration. I had this amazing job offer at a consulting firm in downtown Chicago. The salary was incredible, the benefits were amazing, and honestly, it was my dream job. But James had different ideas. Catherine, he said to me just 2 weeks before our wedding, I think it would be better if you focused on building our home. I make enough money for both of us, and when we have kids, they're going to need their mother. You guys are going to think I was naive, and maybe I was, but I loved this man. I trusted him completely. So I turned down that job offer and became a full-time homemaker. For the next 32 years, I poured every ounce of my energy into making our house a home. I cooked every meal from scratch. I kept our house spotless. I managed every single detail of our lives. When Marcus was born, and then Amy 2 years later, I devoted myself entirely to being the perfect mother. I was the mom who never missed a school play, a soccer game, a parent-teacher conference. I was room mother, PTA treasurer, soccer team snack coordinator. You name it, I did it. I drove carpool for 12 years straight. I helped with homework every single night until both kids graduated high school. And James climbed the corporate ladder while I held down the fort. He became regional manager, then district manager, then vice president of his company. His salary grew and grew, and I was so proud of him. I never once complained about the long hours or the business trips, or the fact that by the time the kids were teenagers, he was basically a stranger in his own home. But wait, it gets so much worse than just being an absent father and husband. When Amy graduated college and got engaged to her boyfriend Todd, I was over the moon. Finally, I thought, I can focus on myself a little bit. Maybe take some classes, maybe even think about going back to work part-time. The kids were grown, James was successful, and I had done my job. That's when everything started falling apart. Amy came to me about 6 months before her wedding with this request that should have been my first red flag. She said, Mom, Todd's mother Carol doesn't have anywhere to live right now. She's having some financial troubles, and we were wondering if she could stay in our old room for a few months after the wedding until she gets back on her feet. Now I want you to picture this. Amy hadn't lived at home for 6 years. But I said yes immediately because that's what I always did. I said yes to everything my family needed. Carol moved in 2 weeks after Amy and Todd's wedding. She was 52 years old, perfectly capable of working, but she had this sob story about how her ex-husband had left her with nothing and she was struggling to find a job. I felt sorry for her, I really did. Don't worry, Carol, I told her. Stay as long as you need to. We have plenty of room. Those few months turned into a year, then 2 years. Carol made no effort to find work, contribute to household expenses, or even help around the house. She treated our home like a hotel and me like the staff. But here's what really gets me angry when I think about it now. James not only didn't mind having Carol there, he seemed to prefer her company to mine. I started noticing little things. James would come home from work and instead of talking to me about his day like he used to, he'd sit with Carol in the living room. They'd laugh together, watch TV together, and I'd be in the kitchen cleaning up after dinner feeling like a third wheel in my own home. James, I said to him one evening, after Carol had been with us for about 18 months, don't you think it's time Carol found her own place? Amy and Todd are doing well financially now. Maybe they could help her get an apartment. James looked at me like I'd suggested something horrible. Catherine, the woman is going through a difficult time. Where's your compassion? Besides, it's not like she's bothering anyone. Not bothering anyone? She was bothering me. But I kept my mouth shut because that's what I always did. The breaking point started building when I noticed that James was giving Carol money. Not just a little bit here and there. I'm talking about substantial amounts. I saw the withdrawals on our bank statements. $500 here, $800 there. Sometimes that chinked $200 in a single week. When I confronted him about it, he got defensive in a way I'd never seen before. Carol needed help with some medical bills, he said. And before you start complaining about money, remember that I'm the one who earns it. That sentence hit me like a slap in the face. After 32 years of managing our household, raising our children, and supporting his career in every way possible, he reduced my contribution to nothing. But you guys, this is where it gets really bad. What I discovered next changed everything. I was doing laundry, because of course I was still doing everyone's laundry, including Carol's, when I found a receipt in James's pants pocket. It was from a jewelry store downtown, a very expensive jewelry store. The receipt was for a diamond necklace that cost $3,500. My heart started pounding because James hadn't given me jewelry in over 10 years. Not for my birthday, not for our anniversary, not for Christmas. So who was this necklace for? I didn't have to wait long to find out. The next Saturday, we were all having dinner together, me, James, and Carol, when Carol showed up wearing this beautiful diamond necklace. She was practically glowing, touching it constantly, making sure everyone noticed it. "Oh, this old thing," she said when I commented on it. I finally decided to treat myself to something nice. I've been saving up. For months. I looked directly at James. His face was red and he wouldn't meet my eyes. In that moment, I knew exactly who had bought that necklace. And it wasn't Carol's savings. After dinner, I confronted James in our bedroom. "Did you buy Carol that necklace?" I asked him directly. He got angry, not embarrassed, not apologetic, but angry at me for asking. So what if I did? The woman has been through hell, and I thought she deserved something nice. You have plenty of jewelry. I stood there staring at this man I'd been married to for over 3 decades, and I realized I didn't recognize him at all. When was the last time he'd thought I deserved something nice? When was the last time he'd bought me anything that wasn't practical? "James," I said quietly, "I haven't received a piece of jewelry from you in 10 years, but you're buying expensive gifts for another woman who's living in our house rent-free. Don't be jealous, Catherine. It's not attractive. Jealous." He called me jealous. That night I lay awake thinking about everything. How had I gotten to this point? How had I become so invisible in my own life that my husband was openly preferring another woman and I was just supposed to accept it? But the worst part, the absolute worst part, was still coming. Amy started visiting more frequently, which at first made me happy. But I quickly realized she wasn't coming to see me. She was coming to see Carol and spend time with her and James. The 3 of them would sit in the living room talking and laughing while I cleaned up the kitchen after cooking dinner for everyone. One evening, about 2 months after the necklace incident, Amy pulled me aside. "Mom, I need to talk to you about something important." We sat down in the kitchen, and Amy had this serious expression on her face that made my stomach clench. "Mom, Dad, and Carol have been talking to me and Todd, and we all think it might be time for you to make some changes in your life." "What kind of changes?" I asked, though I had a sinking feeling I already knew where this was going. "Well, you've been so focused on taking care of everyone else for so long. Maybe it's time you learned to be more independent. Dad thinks you should get your own apartment, maybe find a job, start building your own life." I felt like the ground had disappeared beneath me. "Amy, this is my home. I've lived here for 28 years. I raised you and your brother in this house." "I know, Mom. But Dad says the house is really too big for just you and him, and with Carol needing a place to stay—" "Wait," I interrupted. "Are you saying your father wants me to move out so Carol can stay?" Amy looked uncomfortable, but she nodded. "He thinks it would be better for everyone. You could start fresh, maybe find someone new, build the life you never got to have." I sat there in stunned silence. My husband of 32 years wanted me to move out of the home I'd maintained and loved for decades so whatever Carol was to him, could stay. "And you agree with this?" I asked my daughter. "Mom, I just want what's best for everyone. And honestly, you and Dad haven't seemed happy together for a long time." "Haven't seemed happy? Of course we hadn't. Seemed happy. He'd been ignoring me and lavishing attention on another woman. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I walked through every room of the house, looking at everything I'd created, every memory I'd built. The kitchen where I'd made thousands of meals. The living room where I'd helped with homework and hosted birthday parties. The bedrooms where I'd nursed sick children and read bedtime stories. And they wanted me to just leave. The next morning, James confirmed what Amy had told me. "Catherine, I think Amy's right. We've grown apart, and maybe some time living separately would help us both figure out what we really want." "What you really want is for me to disappear so you can play house with Carol," I said. "That's not fair," he replied. "This is about you learning to be independent." Independent. After 32 years of being completely dependent on him because that's what he'd wanted from the beginning. But here's the thing, and this is where my story takes a turn that none of them saw coming. What James and Amy and even Carol didn't know was that I wasn't as helpless as they thought I was. What they didn't know was that over the years, I'd been quietly taking care of some very important business. You see, when we bought our house 28 years ago, James wanted to put it in both our names. "We're partners," he said. "We should both be on the deed, and we were partners, weren't we? Even though his name went first, we were both listed as owners of the property. But what James forgot, because he'd been so busy climbing his corporate ladder and lately so distracted by Carol, was that 3 years ago, his company had gone through some financial difficulties. There were lawsuits, potential bankruptcy, and James was terrified they might come after our house. "Catherine," he'd said to me in a panic, "I need you to sign some papers. We need to protect our assets in case the company goes under." Those papers transferred the house entirely into my name. James's name came off the deed completely. It was supposed to be temporary, just until his company's legal troubles were resolved, but James never asked me to transfer it back, and I never volunteered to do it. So while my husband of 32 years and my daughter were planning to kick me out of my own home, they had no idea that I was the sole legal owner of the house they wanted me to leave. But wait, there's more. They didn't know. Over the years, while James was working and I was managing the household, I'd also been managing our finances. I balanced the checkbooks, I organized the tax documents, I kept track of all our investments and retirement accounts. What James didn't realize was that many of our accounts were set up as joint accounts with right of survivorship, but some of our biggest investments were in my name only. Remember, he'd been so worried about protecting our assets from his company's potential creditors that we'd moved a lot of our money into accounts that were solely mine. And that business degree I'd never got to use. I'd been using it all along, just quietly, managing our family's finances and making smart investment decisions that James never paid attention to because he assumed I didn't understand money. Our portfolio was worth significantly more than James realized, and most of it was legally mine. So when Amy came back the following week with Todd and announced that they'd found me a nice little apartment and thought I should start transitioning to independent living, I had a surprise for all of them, but I didn't show my hand yet. Instead, I listened to their plan. "Mom," Amy said, "we found this cute one-bedroom place about 20 minutes from here. It's affordable, it's in a nice area, and we think it would be perfect for you to start your new life. Todd nodded enthusiastically. It's really nice, Catherine. Very modern, lots of amenities. You'd love it. And when exactly do you think I should make this move? I asked calmly. Well, Amy said, glancing at Todd, we were thinking maybe next month? That would give you time to pack and get everything organized. Next month, I repeated. And what about Carol? Where will she be living? Oh, Carol will stay here with Dad. They've worked out an arrangement that works well for both of them. An arrangement. My husband and another woman had worked out an arrangement for living in my house. I see, I said. And has anyone discussed this arrangement with me, the person who currently lives here? Amy looked confused. Mom, we're discussing it with you right now. No, Amy. You're telling me what you've all decided. That's very different from discussing it with me. James, who had been quiet up until this point, finally spoke up. Catherine, I know this is a big change, but I really think it's for the best. We'll help you move. We'll make sure you're comfortable in your new place, and maybe after some time apart, we can figure out where to go from here. I looked around the room at the three of them, my husband, my daughter, and the woman who had been living rent-free in my home for 2 years. And I realized they had already made all their plans. They discussed everything among themselves, found me an apartment, decided on a timeline, and now they were simply informing me of their decisions. Not one of them had considered that I might have thoughts or feelings about being displaced from my own home. Not one of them had asked what I wanted or needed. They had simply decided what was convenient for them and expected me to comply. But you know what? I was done complying. That's a very interesting plan, I said finally. But I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. The three of them looked at me expectantly. I won't be moving anywhere, I continued. This is my home, and I'm staying right here. James laughed. Actually laughed. Catherine, be realistic. You can't afford to maintain this house on your own. You don't have a job. You don't have any income. How exactly do you plan to pay the mortgage and utilities and insurance? I smiled at him. It was probably the first genuine smile I'd given him in months. James, I think you're the one who needs to be realistic. And that's when I dropped the first bomb that would change everything. This house is in my name. Only my name. You signed it over to me 3 years ago, remember? When you were worried about your company's legal troubles. The color drained from James's face. I could see him trying to remember, trying to process what I was saying. That was temporary, he said weakly. Was it? Because I don't recall signing anything to transfer it back to you, and I just checked with our lawyer last week to confirm. I am the sole owner of this property. Amy was looking back and forth between me and James like she was watching a tennis match. What does that mean exactly? She asked. It means, sweetheart, that if anyone is moving out, it won't be me. The room went completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop, but I wasn't done, not even close. And James, about those financial concerns you mentioned. You're right that I don't have a traditional job, but I do have assets. Quite a lot of them, actually. You remember all those investment accounts we set up over the years? The ones you were too busy to pay attention to because you trusted me to handle them. James was starting to look sick. Most of those accounts are in my name only. We set them up that way for tax purposes, remember? And that business degree you convinced me not to use? I've been using it all along, managing our investments and making financial decisions that have grown our portfolio considerably. I pulled out a folder I'd been keeping in my desk drawer and set it on the coffee table. Our accountant helped me prepare this financial summary. I am financially independent, James. Very much so. Amy picked up the papers and started reading. Her eyes got wider and wider. Mom, this says you have... This can't be right. Oh, it's right. I've been very careful with our money over the years. Your father was so focused on his salary that he never paid attention to what our investments were doing, but I did. Carol, who had been sitting quietly through this entire exchange, finally spoke up. So what are you saying exactly? I turned to look at her directly for the first time in the conversation. I'm saying, Carol, that your arrangement with James is going to need a new location. The silence that followed was deafening. James finally found his voice. Catherine, you can't be serious. We can work this out. We don't need to make any drastic decisions. Drastic decisions? I repeated. Like deciding to kick your wife out of her own home so you can live with another woman. Those kinds of drastic decisions? It's not like that, he protested. Then what is it like, James? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks exactly like that. Amy was still staring at the financial papers. Mom, why didn't you ever tell us about all this? Because, Amy, I never imagined I'd need to. I never imagined that my own family would try to make me homeless. We weren't trying to make you homeless, Amy protested. We found you an apartment. An apartment I didn't ask for, to solve a problem I didn't create. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the garden I'd planted and maintained for 28 years. Here's what's going to happen, I said, turning back to face them. James, you have 30 days to find somewhere else to live. Carol, you have 1 week. Catherine, you can't just throw us out, James said. Actually, I can. It's my house. What about our marriage? He asked. I looked at this man I'd loved for so many years, who had been planning to discard me like an old piece of furniture, and I felt nothing. No love, no anger, no sadness, just nothing. What about it, James? What marriage? The one where you ignore me for years and then try to kick me out of my own home so you can live with another woman? I told you, it's not like that with Carol and me. Then why were you so eager to get rid of me so she could stay? He didn't have an answer for that. But here's where the story gets really interesting, because what happened next showed me exactly who my daughter really was. Amy stood up and faced me with an expression I'd never seen before. Cold, hard, almost cruel. Mom, I think you're being completely unreasonable. Dad has supported you for 32 years. He's given you a beautiful home, a comfortable life, everything you could want. And now you're going to throw him out over what? Jealousy? I stared at my daughter in complete shock. Amy, your father was planning to throw me out. How is it jealousy to want to stay in my own home? Because you're not being practical. You're being emotional and vindictive. Dad deserves better than this. What does your father deserve exactly? He deserves to be happy. He's worked hard his whole life, and if he's found someone who makes him happy, you should be mature enough to step aside. Step aside. My own daughter was telling me to step aside so my husband could be with another woman. And what do I deserve, Amy? You deserve to build your own life instead of being bitter about the one you chose, the one I chose, as if I'd chosen, to be discarded after 32 years of devotion. I see, I said quietly. And if I don't step aside voluntarily? Amy's expression got even harder. Then maybe Todd and I need to reconsider how much we want you in our lives going forward. There it was. The threat I'd been waiting for. My daughter was threatening to cut me out of her life if I didn't allow my husband to kick me out of my home for another woman. I looked around the room at these three people, my husband, my daughter, and a woman who had contributed nothing to my family, but had somehow managed to turn them against me. And you know what I realized in that moment? I didn't recognize any of them. The man I'd loved and supported for 32 years was willing to discard me for a woman he'd known for 2 years. The daughter I'd devoted my life to raising was threatening to abandon me if I didn't make way for her father's new relationship. And the woman I'd welcomed into my home out of kindness was sitting there smugly watching my family fall apart, knowing she was the cause. But here's the thing that none of them understood yet. I wasn't the same woman who had agreed to give up her career 32 years ago. I wasn't the same woman who had spent decades saying yes to everything everyone else wanted. 32 years of being taken for granted had taught me something very valuable. People will treat you exactly as poorly as you allow them to, and I was done allowing it. Okay, I said finally. I understand everyone's position very clearly now. They all looked relieved, thinking I was going to give in. James, Carol, You have until the end of the week to find somewhere else to live. Catherine. James started to protest. And Amy, I continued, looking directly at my daughter, since you feel comfortable threatening to cut me out of your life, let me save you the trouble. I'm cutting you out of mine. Amy's mouth fell open. Mom, I didn't mean... Yes, you did. You meant exactly what you said. You're willing to lose your mother to protect your father's relationship with another woman. That tells me everything I need to know about who you really are. Mom, please. I'm done, Amy. I'm done with all of you. I walked to the front door and opened it. I'd like you all to leave now. When you come back for your belongings, please call first. None of them moved. Now, I said firmly. James stood up first. Catherine, we need to talk about this rationally. There's nothing to talk about. You made your choice. You all made your choices. Carol finally spoke up again. Where am I supposed to go? I honestly don't care, Carol. You've been living rent-free in my house for 2 years while contributing nothing. Figure it out. But I don't have anywhere. Not my problem. Amy was crying now. Mom, please don't do this. We can work this out. Work what out, Amy? You just told me that if I don't let your father throw me out of my own home, you'll cut me out of your life. What exactly is there to work out? I was upset. I didn't mean it like that. Yes, you did. I held the door open and waited. One by one, they filed out. James looked back at me from the driveway. Catherine, this isn't over. Yes, it is. I closed the door, locked it, and for the first time in months, I was alone in my own home. And you know what? It felt amazing. But this story is far from over, because what happened in the next few days showed me just how far they were willing to go to get what they wanted. The first sign that they weren't going to accept my decision came at 6 a.m. the next morning. I was awakened by the sound of someone trying to unlock my front door. I grabbed my robe and went downstairs to find James standing on my porch with his key, looking frustrated. James, what are you doing? I live here, Catherine. I'm coming in to get my things. I told you to call first. This is ridiculous. You can't just lock me out of my own home. It's not your home, James. We established that yesterday. He pushed past me and walked into the house. We need to talk. No, we don't. You need to pack your belongings and leave. But James had other plans. He sat down at the kitchen table like nothing had happened. Catherine, I've been thinking about everything you said yesterday, and I think we can reach a compromise. What kind of compromise? You can stay in the house, but Carol needs somewhere to live too. This place is big enough for all of us. We, adios, can work out an arrangement. I stared at him in disbelief. An arrangement where I continue to live in my own home with my husband and his girlfriend? She's not my girlfriend. Then what is she, James? He couldn't answer that question. Again. Look, he continued, I know you're upset, but you're not thinking clearly. Where am I supposed to go? I don't have the kind of money it takes to start over at my age. You should have thought about that before you decided to replace me. I'm not replacing you. Then why were you so eager to get me out of this house? Because I thought it would be better for everyone. Better for everyone, or better for you and Carol. He was getting frustrated. Catherine, you're twisting everything around. I never said I wanted to end our marriage. You just wanted to end me living in the same house as you. That's not the same thing. But here's what James didn't know, and what made me realize just how naive he really was about our financial situation. While he'd been downstairs trying to convince me to let him and Carol both stay in my house, I'd been upstairs on the phone with my lawyer. Catherine, my attorney, had told me, since you're the sole owner of the property, you have every right to decide who lives there. If your husband becomes hostile or refuses to leave, we can pursue legal remedies. What kind of legal remedies? Zio can file for a restraining order if necessary. We can also begin divorce proceedings immediately, which would formalize the separation of assets. Divorce proceedings. The word sent a chill through me, but also, relief? How quickly could we do that? I asked. We could file the papers today if you want. Given that the house and most of your major assets are already in your name, it would be relatively straightforward. What about spousal support? Catherine, based on what you've told me about your financial situation, you'd be more likely to pay spousal support than receive it. But given the circumstances, particularly if we can prove infidelity or abandonment, we might be able to avoid that entirely. So while James was downstairs talking about compromises and arrangements, I was upstairs talking to a lawyer about divorce papers. When I came back downstairs, James was making coffee like he owned the place. I thought about what you said. I told him, and you're right. We do need to work out an arrangement. He looked relieved. I'm glad you're being reasonable about this. The arrangement is this. I'm filing for divorce today. He dropped the coffee mug. It shattered on the kitchen floor. Catherine, you don't mean that. I absolutely mean it. My lawyer is drawing up the papers right now. Your lawyer? When did you get a lawyer? This morning. While you were down here making yourself at home in my kitchen, James's face went white. Catherine, please. Let's not do anything drastic. We can work this out. Work out what, James? Work out how I can be comfortable living with you and your whatever Carol is to you. I told you, there's nothing going on between Carol and me. Then prove it. How? Tell Carol she needs to find somewhere else to live. Today. James opened his mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. She doesn't have anywhere to go. Not my problem. Catherine, I can't just throw her out on the street. Why not? You were perfectly willing to throw me out. That's different. How is it different? Because she's vulnerable right now. She's been through a lot. And I haven't been through a lot. Being married to a man who ignores me for years and then tries to kick me out of my own home? James sat down heavily at the kitchen table. What do you want from me? I want you to choose. Choose what? Me or her? The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. If James had loved me, if our marriage had meant anything to him, he would have chosen me instantly. He would have told Carol to leave and begged me for another chance. Instead, he sat there, thinking about it. It's not that simple, he finally said. Yes, it is. Carol doesn't have family to help her. She doesn't have the resources you have. So you're choosing her. I'm not choosing anyone. I'm trying to be compassionate to someone who needs help by sacrificing your wife. I'm not sacrificing you. I'm trying to find a solution that works for everyone. I looked at this man I'd been married to for 32 years, and I realized he genuinely didn't understand what he was asking of me. James, there is no solution that works for everyone. You can't have a wife and a living girlfriend. She's not my girlfriend. Then what is she? Again, no answer. You know what? It doesn't matter what she is. What matters is that you're choosing her over me, so I'm making the choice easy for you. I walked to the phone and dialed my lawyer's number. Hi, it's Catherine. Yes, please file those papers today. James jumped up from the table. Catherine, wait. No more waiting, James. I've been waiting for you to remember that you have a wife for 2 years now. Please don't do this. It's already done. And that's when things got really ugly. James called Amy, and Amy called Marcus, and suddenly I had both my children at my door that evening, angrier than I'd ever seen them. Mom, what the hell are you doing? Marcus demanded as soon as I let them in. Marcus had always been more direct than Amy, but I'd never heard him speak to me with such hostility. I'm protecting myself, I said calmly. By destroying our family? Our family was already destroyed, Marcus. I just stopped pretending it wasn't. Amy was crying again. Mom, Dad is devastated. He doesn't understand why you're being so cruel. Cruel? I'm being cruel. Yes. He's trying to help someone who needs it, and you're punishing him for having a good heart. I stared at my daughter in amazement. Amy, your father tried to kick me out of my own home so he could live with another woman. How is that having a good heart? He wasn't kicking you out. He was trying to help you become independent. Independent of what? Of him, of this house, of being so needy all the time. Needy. My daughter called me needy. How exactly have I been needy, Amy? You've never had your own life. You've always been completely dependent on Dad for everything. He thought it would be good for you to learn to stand on your own feet. By forcing me to move out of my home? By encouraging you to build your own life? Marcus nodded in agreement. Mom, you've been living through Dad and us kids for decades. Maybe it is time for you to figure out who you are on your own. I looked back and forth between my two children, the children I'd devoted my entire adult life to raising, and I realized they saw me as a burden. In their minds, I was this pathetic, dependent woman who needed to be pushed out of the nest for her own good. So you both think your father was right to try to make me move out. We think Dad was trying to help you, Amy said. And instead of appreciating it, you're being vindictive. Vindictive. Yes, you're trying to hurt him because your feelings are hurt. But that's not fair, Mom. Dad has taken care of you for 32 years. He deserves some happiness. And what about what I deserve? You deserve to be happy too, Marcus said. But your happiness can't come at the expense of Dad's. So his happiness can come at the expense of mine. That's not what we're saying. Then what are you saying? Amy wiped her eyes and took a deep breath. We're saying that maybe it's time for you and Dad to live separately for a while. Maybe Carol staying here temporarily isn't such a bad thing if it helps Dad transition to whatever comes next. Whatever comes next? If you guys get divorced, Marcus said quietly, Dad's going to need support. Carol can provide that. I sat down on my sofa and looked at my children. Really looked at them. So you want me to allow my husband to live in my house with another woman while we get divorced because he'll need support? When you put it like that, it sounds bad, Amy said. But that's not really what's happening. Then what is happening? Dad made a mistake, Marcus said. He handled this whole thing badly, but he's not a bad person, and he doesn't deserve to be thrown out of his home. It's not his home. It's been his home for 28 years. And it's been my home for 28 years too. But that didn't stop him from trying to get me to leave. That's different, Amy said. How? Because you can afford to live somewhere else. Dad's whole life is tied up in this house. I stood up and walked to the mantelpiece where I kept family photos. Pictures of James and me on our wedding day. Pictures of the kids when they were small. Pictures of all of us together over the years, looking happy. Let me ask you both something, I said without turning around. If I had been the one trying to kick your father out of this house so I could live with another man, what would you think of me? Silence. If I had ignored your father for 2 years while lavishing attention on another man, spending his money on expensive gifts for that man, and then tried to force your father to move out so my boyfriend could move in, what would you call me? More silence. You'd call me a cheating, selfish, horrible wife and mother, I said, turning back to face them. You'd be furious with me for treating your father that way. Mom, it's not the same thing, Amy said weakly. Why not? Because Dad isn't, he and Carol aren't what? They're not sleeping together. I looked at my daughter with pity. Amy, do you really believe that? Yes. Then you're more naive than I was. What's that supposed to mean? It means I found the hotel receipts. Both my children went very quiet. What hotel receipts? Marcus asked. I went to my desk and pulled out another folder. Over the past few days, I'd been doing a lot of investigating. Your father has been taking Carol to the Marriott downtown twice a week for the past 6 months. Always the same room. Always for 3 hours. I handed Marcus the credit card statements I'd printed out. I called the hotel to ask about the charges. They were very helpful. Amy was shaking her head. That doesn't mean anything. Maybe they were meeting with lawyers or something. For 3 hours in a hotel room twice a week? Mom, Marcus said quietly, how did you get these statements? I'm on the account. I've always managed our finances, remember? Marcus was studying the papers, and I could see the exact moment when he realized what he was looking at. "Oh," he said softly. "Oh is right." Amy grabbed the papers from Marcus. "This could be anything." "Amy, stop." "No, I don't believe Dad would cheat on you. He's not that kind of person." "What kind of person is he?" He's a good man who made some mistakes." "Some mistakes?" "Amy, your father has been having an affair for at least 6 months, probably longer. He moved his girlfriend into our house and tried to kick me out so they could live together openly. What part of that sounds like a mistake to you?" Amy was crying again, but now she looked angry instead of sad. "Even if that's true, even if Dad was cheating, that doesn't give you the right to destroy his life." I stared at my daughter in complete shock. "I'm sorry." "What? You heard me. Even if Dad cheated, you don't have to ruin him. You could forgive him. People work through these things all the time. Amy, your father didn't just cheat on me. He tried to kick me out of my own home for his mistress." "So what? You're rich. You showed us those financial statements. You could afford to live anywhere you want. Dad can't." "So because I have money, I should let my husband steal my home for another woman?" "You're not letting him steal anything. You're being generous and forgiving like a good wife should be." A good wife should be. I sat back down and looked at my daughter for a long moment. "Amy, if Todd cheated on you and tried to kick you out of your home for another woman, would you forgive him and let him have the house?" "That's different." "How?" "Because Todd and I are young. We have our whole lives ahead of us. You and Dad are older. This is probably Dad's last chance at happiness. His last chance at happiness. At my expense. And what about my last chance at happiness? Mom, you can be happy anywhere. You're smart. You're financially secure. You can start over. But Dad has built his whole life around this house, this neighborhood, his routine. You can't just take that away from him." I looked at Marcus to see if he agreed with his sister. He nodded. "Mom, I think Amy's right. You're in a better position to start over than Dad is. My own children were telling me that I should sacrifice my home, my comfort, my sense of security and belonging, so that their cheating father could be happy with his mistress." "I see," I said finally. "So both of you think I should move out and let your father and Carol live in my house?" "Just temporarily," Amy said quickly, "until they figure out their situation." "Their situation?" "Whether they want to be together permanently or if this is just a phase. A phase. Dad might come to his senses," Marcus added. "This thing with Carol might not last, but if you force him to choose right now, when emotions are running high, he might make a decision he'll regret later. So I should wait around while my husband has his affair, hoping he'll eventually come back to me." "You should be patient and understanding," Amy said, "like you always have been. Like I always had been." That was the problem. I had always been patient and understanding. I had always put everyone else's needs before my own. I had always been the one to compromise, to sacrifice, to give up what I wanted so other people could be happy. And where had it gotten me? My husband was cheating on me with a woman I'd welcomed into my home out of kindness. My daughter was threatening to cut me out of her life if I didn't cooperate with her father's affair. My son thought I should be grateful for the opportunity to start over alone at 58 so his father could be happy with a younger woman. "No," I said quietly. "No what?" Amy asked. "No, I'm not going to be patient and understanding. No, I'm not going to wait around hoping your father comes to his senses. No, I'm not going to move out of my own home so he can live here with his mistress. Mom, please. And most importantly, no, I'm not going to pretend that any of this is acceptable just because you think I should." I stood up and walked to the front door. "I think you both should leave now." "Mom, we're trying to help," Marcus said. "No, you're not. You're trying to convince me to accept being treated horribly so that everyone else can be comfortable." "That's not fair," Amy protested. "Fair? You want to talk about fair?" I turned to face them both. "Fair would have been your father talking to me about his feelings instead of starting an affair. Fair would have been him asking for a separation, honestly, instead of trying to trick me into moving out. Fair would have been you two supporting your mother instead of taking your father's side when he betrayed me. We're not taking sides, Marcus said. Yes, you are. You're taking his side. Both of you. We're trying to think about what's best for the whole family, Amy said. The whole family? I'm part of this family too, or have you forgotten that? Of course we haven't forgotten. Then start acting like it. Start thinking about what's best for me too, not just what's convenient for your father. Amy and Marcus looked at each other and I could see them having some kind of silent conversation. Mom, Amy said finally, what if we could work out a compromise? What if Dad agreed to end things with Carol, and you guys could try marriage counseling? What if he agreed to give up his girlfriend, and we could try to save our marriage? Yes. Amy, your father has had multiple opportunities to choose me over Carol. Each time, he's chosen her. Why would I want to save a marriage with someone who doesn't want to be married to me? Maybe he does want to be married to you, but he's confused right now. Confused about what? About what he wants. About what he's feeling. Maybe this thing with Carol is just a midlife crisis or something. A midlife crisis. They were calling my husband's affair a midlife crisis. And how long should I wait for him to work through his midlife crisis? I don't know. However long it takes. While he lives in my house with his mistress? Mom, can you please stop calling her that? What should I call her? I don't know, but mistress sounds so harsh. She is sleeping with my husband while living rent-free in my house. What would you call her? Amy didn't have an answer for that. Marcus cleared his throat. Mom, what would it take for you to consider being more flexible about this situation? Flexible? What would Dad have to do to make this right, I thought. About that question seriously for a moment. Your father would have to end his relationship with Carol immediately. Ask her to move out of this house today and commit to marriage counseling with no conditions. And if he did that, I'd consider it. Amy looked hopeful. Really? I'd consider it. I wouldn't promise anything, but I'd consider it. Okay, Marcus said. We'll talk to Dad. Good luck with that. They headed toward the door, but Amy turned. Back. Mom, what if Dad can't do that? What if he won't? Then you'll have your answer about what your father really wants. And what will you do? I'll move on with my life. Without him. Without all of you, if necessary. Amy's face crumpled. Mom, you don't mean that. Amy, you've made it very clear that your loyalty is to your father, not to me. If that's your choice, I have to accept it. But I don't have to like it, and I don't have to pretend we have the same relationship we used to have. But I love you. I love you too. But love isn't enough when it's not accompanied by respect and support. I do respect you. No, you don't. If you respected me, you wouldn't be asking me to accept your father's infidelity. If you respected me, you wouldn't be asking me to give up my home for his girlfriend. If you respected me, you'd be angry at him for treating me this way, not angry at me for refusing to accept it. Amy was crying again, and Marcus looked uncomfortable. We'll talk to Dad, Marcus said again. You do that. After they left, I sat in my quiet house and thought about everything that had happened over the past week. A week ago, I had a husband, 2 children, and what I thought was a solid family. Now I had divorce papers in process, children who thought I was being unreasonable for not accepting their father's affair, and a house that felt more like home than it had in years. But you know what? I also had something I hadn't had in a very long time. I had my self-respect back, and that night, for the first time in months, I slept peacefully. But the next morning, I woke up to find Carol sitting at my kitchen table. We need to talk, she said, and that's when I realized this battle was far from over. The next part of this story involves a confrontation that I never could have prepared for, and a revelation that changed everything I thought I knew about the past 2 years. Carol was sitting at my kitchen table like she owned the place, drinking coffee from my favorite mug. "How did you get in here?" I asked. "James gave me a key." "James doesn't live here anymore." "That's what we need to talk about." I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat down across from her. If she wanted to have this conversation, fine. I was ready. "What exactly do you want to discuss, Carol?" "I want to discuss how we can all live together peacefully." I almost laughed. "We can't." "Why not? This house is huge. There's plenty of room for all of us." "Because you're sleeping with my husband." "Says who?" "Says the hotel receipts. Carol's." Face didn't change at all. She'd been expecting this. Those don't prove anything. They prove you and James have been going to the same hotel room twice a week for 6 months. We've been meeting with lawyers. For 3 hours at a time? In a hotel room? James's divorce lawyer thought it would be better to meet somewhere private. I stared at her. James's divorce lawyer? He's been planning to leave you for over a year, Catherine. Those meetings were about how to do it without losing everything in the divorce. The room started spinning around me. "What are you talking about?" "James has been unhappy in this marriage for years. He's been talking to lawyers about how to protect his assets if he divorced you. That's impossible. James never said anything about being unhappy." "Of course he didn't. He needed time to move money around, to make sure you couldn't take him to the cleaners." "The money is mine, Carol. The house is mine." Carol smiled, and it was the coldest smile I'd ever seen. "Is it, though? What do you mean?" "James has been very busy over the past year, Catherine. Very busy indeed." She reached into her purse and pulled out a folder. "What is that?" "Documents. Legal documents that James has been working on with his lawyer." I opened the folder and my blood turned to ice. The first document was a petition to have the house transfer reversed, claiming that I had coerced James into signing over the deed under duress. The second document was a financial affidavit claiming that I had been hiding assets and manipulating our joint accounts without James's knowledge. The third document was a psychiatric evaluation request, asking the court to determine my mental competency to manage our financial affairs. "This is insane," I whispered. "Is it? James has been documenting your erratic behavior for months, your increasing isolation, your paranoia about our friendship, your sudden interest in finances that you'd never cared about before. I've always managed our finances, not according to James's documentation. According to him, you've recently become obsessed with money and control, possibly due to early onset dementia or other age-related mental decline." I felt like I was going to be sick. "You planned this. Both of you." James needed a way out of this marriage that wouldn't leave. Him financially ruined. I helped him develop a strategy. "How long have you been planning this?" "Since about 6 months after I moved in. It became obvious pretty quickly that James was miserable with you and that you were, let's say, not the sharpest knife in the drawer when it comes to protecting yourself. So you seduced him." "I didn't have to seduce him, Catherine. He was desperate for someone who actually listened to him, who appreciated him, who didn't take him for granted." "I never took him for granted. Really? When was the last time you asked James about his work, his dreams, his feelings about anything?" Opened my mouth to answer and realized I couldn't remember. "You treated James like a paycheck with legs," Carol continued. "You never saw him as a person with his own needs and desires. You just expected him to work and pay bills and be grateful for your domestic services. That's not true, isn't it? James told me he felt like a stranger in his own home, like you were more interested in maintaining your perfect little domestic kingdom than in actually connecting with him as a human being. If James was unhappy, he should have talked to me about it. He tried, multiple times over the years. But you were always too busy with your schedules and your lists and your perfect little routines to really listen. I sat there trying to process what she was telling me. Had James really tried to talk to me about being unhappy? Had I really been so focused on managing the household that I'd missed my husband's emotional needs? Even if that's true, I said, finally, it doesn't excuse what you two have done. What have we done exactly? You've been plotting to steal my house and my money. We've been planning James's exit from an unhappy marriage in a way that ensures he's not left destitute by a vindictive ex-wife. I'm not vindictive, aren't you? You threw James out of his home with less than a week's notice. You're filing for divorce specifically to hurt him financially. You've turned his children against him by playing the victim. I am the victim, are you? Or are you a woman who's finally being forced to face the consequences of 32 years of emotional neglect? I stood up from the table, shaking with rage. Get out of my house. It's not going to be your house much longer, Catherine. What do you mean? James's lawyer is very confident that they can prove you coerced him into signing over the deed. And once they do that, this house will be considered marital property again. That's impossible, is it? James has documentation showing that you threatened him during his company's financial crisis. You told him you'd leave him if he didn't protect your assets by putting everything in your name. I never said that. Can you prove you didn't? Because James has been keeping very detailed records of your conversations. I felt like the walls were closing in around me. Even if they reverse the house transfer, I still have my own assets. Do you? James has been tracking every penny of those investments you're so proud of. His lawyer believes they can prove that. You used marital funds to make those investments without James's knowledge or consent. They were joint funds. I had every right to invest them. Did you? Or did you manipulate joint accounts to build your own private portfolio while James was working to support the family? That's exactly what I did. It was legal and smart, and I stopped talking when I realized what I'd just admitted. Carol smiled again. Thank you for confirming that. I'm sure James's lawyer will be very interested in your confession that you deliberately used joint marital funds to build assets in your name only. I had walked right into her trap. You're recording this conversation. I don't need to. You just admitted to financial manipulation in front of a witness. That's enough. I sat back down, my legs too shaky to hold me up. What do you want, Carol? I want you to be reasonable about this divorce. I want you to accept a fair settlement that allows James to keep the house and a reasonable portion of the assets. And if I don't, then James will pursue every legal avenue available to prove that you're mentally incompetent, financially manipulative, and emotionally abusive. He'll fight for everything and he'll probably win. James would never do that to me. James has been doing it to you for over a year. Where do you think all this documentation came from? I thought about all the times over the past year when James had seemed to be paying unusual attention to our conversations, asking me odd questions about our finances, encouraging me to talk about my investment strategies. He'd been gathering evidence against me. How could he do this to me? Because he wants to be free, Catherine. He wants to be happy. And he's finally found someone who makes him happy. You, me. So what happens now? Now you decide how ugly you want this to get. You can accept a reasonable settlement and move on with your life. Or you can fight it and risk losing everything. What's a reasonable settlement? James keeps the house. You keep your investment accounts, but you pay him spousal support for 10 years. You also pay his legal fees. That's not reasonable, that's robbery. It's generous, considering what he could take if he really wanted to fight. I sat there staring at this woman who had systematically destroyed my life while pretending to be grateful for my help, and I realized there's something important. I wasn't going to go down without a fight. Carol, you've made one very big mistake in all. Your planning. What's that? You underestimated me. I don't think I did. Oh, but you did. You see, while you and James were busy plotting against me, I was busy doing some investigating of my own. I pulled out my phone and showed her the screen. What is that? It's a recording app. I've been recording every conversation I've had with James, with my children, and with you for the past week. Carol's face went pale. Recording people without their consent is illegal in this state. Actually, it's not. This is a one-party consent state, which means I can record any conversation I'm a part of without telling the other person. You can't use those recordings in court, can't I? My lawyer seems to think they'll be very useful, especially the one where you just admitted to conspiring with James to defraud me of my assets. I never said that, didn't you? You admitted that you and James have been planning this for over a year. You admitted that James has been documenting false claims about my mental state. You admitted that you've been helping him hide assets and manipulate legal documents. That's not what I said. It's what I recorded, and it's what a judge will hear if this goes to court. Carol stood up abruptly. This conversation is over. Yes, it is, and so is your time in my house. You have 24 hours to get out. James won't let you throw me out. James doesn't have a choice, and neither do you. We'll see about that. After Carol left, I immediately called my lawyer. We need to meet today, I told him. I have some new evidence that changes everything. What kind of evidence? The kind that proves my husband and his girlfriend have been conspiring to commit fraud. 2 hours later, I was sitting in my lawyer's office playing him the recording of my conversation with Carol. This is excellent, he said when it finished. This proves conspiracy, fraud, and potentially extortion. Can we stop them? We can do better than that. We can have them arrested. What do you mean? What they've done isn't just unethical, Catherine. It's illegal. Filing false legal documents, making fraudulent claims about someone's mental competency, conspiring to steal assets. These are serious crimes. I don't want James to go to jail. Even after what he's done to you, he's still my children's father. Catherine, this man has spent over a year plotting to destroy you financially and personally. He's been building a case to have you declared mentally incompetent so he can steal your assets. Are you really going to protect him? I thought about that for a long moment. What are my options? We can file criminal charges and let the district attorney's office handle it. Or we can use this evidence as leverage in the divorce proceedings to ensure you get everything you're entitled to. What would you recommend? I'd recommend both. File the criminal charges to protect yourself legally and use the evidence to negotiate a divorce settlement that leaves you whole. And what would that settlement look like? You keep the house, you keep all your investments, James pays your legal fees, and you owe him nothing in spousal support. Can we really make that happen? With this evidence? Absolutely. I left my lawyer's office feeling more confident than I had in weeks, but the real test was still coming. That evening, James came to the house with Amy and Todd. They looked like they were ready for battle. Catherine, we need to talk about this situation rationally, James said as soon as I opened the door. The only thing we need to talk about is when you're moving out. I'm not moving anywhere. This is my home, too. Not according to the law. Amy stepped forward. Mom, Carol told us about your conversation today. She said you threatened her. I told her to leave my house. That's not a threat. It's an eviction notice. You can't just throw people out on the street, Amy protested. Watch. Me. Todd, who had been quiet up until now, finally spoke. Catherine, I think you're letting your emotions cloud your judgment. Maybe we should all sit down and work out a compromise that works for everyone. I looked at my son-in-law, this young man who had been part of my family for less than 2 years, and I couldn't believe he had the audacity to lecture me about my own situation. Todd, with all due respect, this is none of your business. It becomes my business when it affects my wife. How does my divorce affect you? Because Amy is upset. Because this whole situation is tearing the family apart. I didn't tear this family apart. Your father-in-law did that when he decided to have an affair. That's not proven, Amy said quickly. I pulled out my phone and played a portion of the recording from that morning, the part where Carol admitted to helping James plan his exit. Strategy. The silence that followed was deafening. James's face went white. You recorded Carol without her permission? I recorded a conversation that took place in my kitchen with someone who was illegally in my house. Catherine, you can't use that recording. It was obtained illegally. Actually, it wasn't. This is a one-party consent state. You had no right. I had every right to protect myself from people who were conspiring to defraud me. Amy was staring at her father with shock. Dad, is it true? Have you been planning this for over a year? James couldn't meet her eyes. It's not what it sounds like. Then what is it? I've been protecting our assets, making sure that if things went badly between your mother and me, we wouldn't lose everything. By plotting to steal my house and have me declared mentally incompetent? I asked. I never said anything about having you declared mentally incompetent. No, but Carol did. In my kitchen this morning, while being recorded. I played another portion of the recording. Carol's threats about James's lawyer pursuing mental competency. Challenges. Amy sat down heavily on my sofa. Oh my God. Todd was looking back and forth between James and me like he was watching a tennis match. Dad, Amy said quietly, tell me you didn't know about this. James sat down next to her. Honey, your mother has been difficult to live with for a long time. I needed to explore my options. Difficult how? She's controlling. She's manipulative. She doesn't listen. Stop, Amy said firmly. Just stop. She stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the garden. Amy? James said uncertainly. I need to ask you something, Dad, and I need you to tell me the truth. Of course. Are you in love with Carol? The question hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Amy, that's complicated. It's not complicated. It's yes or no. Are you in love with Carol? James looked at me, then at Todd, then back at Amy. Yes, he said quietly. I am, Amy nodded slowly. And do you want to divorce Mom and marry Carol? Eventually, yes. Then why didn't you just say that from the beginning? Why all this plotting and scheming and trying to make Mom look crazy? Because I didn't want to hurt anyone unnecessarily. I thought if I could find a way to transition out of the marriage without destroying everything. You thought you could manipulate the situation so you got what you wanted without having to take responsibility for your choices, Amy said flatly. James looked shocked. Amy, I was trying to protect everyone. No, Dad, you were trying to protect yourself. She turned to look at me. Mom, I owe you an apology. Amy, no, let me say this. I've been completely wrong about this situation. I thought you were being vindictive and unreasonable, but you were just protecting yourself from people who were plotting against you. Honey, it's okay. No, it's not okay. I chose Dad's side without even trying to understand what was really happening. I threatened to cut you out of my life because you wouldn't let your husband steal your house for his girlfriend. I was horrible to you. Amy started crying, but these weren't the manipulative tears she'd been shedding all week. These were tears of genuine shame and regret. I don't know how to make this right, she said. You just did, I told her. By seeing the truth and being willing to admit you were wrong, James stood up abruptly. I can't believe you're all turning against me over this. We're not turning against you, Dad, Amy said. We're just not willing to help you cheat Mom out of her home and her money anymore. I wasn't cheating her out of anything. I was trying to find a fair solution. A fair solution where you get the house, the girlfriend, and Mom pays your legal bills? Todd asked. How exactly is that fair? James looked around the room and seemed to realize that he'd lost everyone. Fine, he said. Catherine, what do you want? I want you and Carol out of my house by tomorrow. And then what? And then we proceed with the divorce. My lawyer will be in touch with yours. What kind of settlement are you looking for? The kind where I keep what's mine and you keep what's yours and what's mine. Your clothes, your personal belongings, and whatever money is in your personal checking account. That's it? That's it. Catherine, I can't survive on that. I need the house, or at least part of the investment portfolio. No. Be reasonable. I am being reasonable. I'm not having you arrested for conspiracy and fraud. James went very quiet. You wouldn't. Try me. I played the final portion of Carol's recording, the part where she detailed their entire scheme. My lawyer says this constitutes criminal conspiracy to commit fraud. The district attorney's office is very interested in cases like this. You're bluffing, am I? Would you like to find out? James looked around the room one more time, seeking support that wasn't coming. Fine, he said finally. Carol and I will be out by tomorrow. Good, but this isn't over, Catherine. I'll fight the divorce settlement. You're welcome to try. But I should probably mention that my lawyer has also discovered some very interesting things about Carol's background. What do you mean? I mean, Carol isn't exactly who she's pretended to be. Did you know she's been married 4 times? Did you know that 3 of her previous husbands have filed police reports about missing money and forged documents? Did you know that she's currently wanted for questioning in 2 other states for financial fraud? James's face went ashen. That's impossible. Is it? When was the last time you actually verified anything Carol told you about her past? She wouldn't. She's not. She's a professional con artist, James. And you've been her mark for 2 years. I handed him a folder. This is everything my private investigator found about your girlfriend. It makes for very interesting reading. James opened the folder and started reading. With each page, he looked sicker. She told me her ex-husband left her with nothing, he whispered. Her last ex-husband filed a police report claiming she emptied their joint bank accounts and disappeared with $200,000. Sound familiar? Oh, God! She's been using you to establish a new identity and a new base of operations. Once she got what she needed from you, she would have disappeared, just like she did with the others. James sat down heavily, still staring at the papers. I've been such an idiot. Yes, you have. Amy was reading over her father's shoulder. Dad, this woman is a criminal. I know. She could have destroyed you financially. I know. Todd cleared his throat. So what happens now? Now James gets Carol out of this house before she realizes we know who she really is, I said. And then James and I proceed with our divorce, like civilized adults. And what about us? James asked quietly. What about our family? I looked at this man I'd been married to for 32 years. This man who had been willing to betray me, humiliate me, and financially destroy me for a woman who was planning to rob him blind. I don't know, James. I honestly don't know. The next morning, I watched from my bedroom window as James and Carol loaded her belongings into his car. Carol looked furious, but James looked broken. Part of me felt sorry for him. He'd given up his marriage, his family's respect, and nearly his entire financial future for a woman who had been planning to steal everything from him. But mostly, I felt free. 2 hours after they left, Amy and Marcus came over. Mom, Marcus said, I owe you a huge apology. We both do, Amy added. I accept your apologies. How can you forgive us so easily? Marcus asked. We were awful to you. Because you're my children, and I love you. And because you were manipulated by people you trusted. Dad manipulated us? Your father has been lying to all of us for over a year. He convinced you that I was the problem because it was easier than admitting he was having an affair. And we believed him, Amy said sadly. Because you wanted to believe the best about your father. That's not a character flaw. That's love. What happens now? Marcus asked. Now we rebuild. Your father and I will get divorced, and we'll all figure out how to be a family in a new way. Will you be okay? I looked around my house, my home, and smiled. I'll be more than okay. For the first time in years, I'm going to focus on making myself happy. What does that look like? I don't know yet. Maybe I'll travel. Maybe I'll go back to school. Maybe I'll start that business I always dreamed about. What business? I've always wanted to open an interior design consultancy. I've been designing and managing homes for 32 years. Maybe it's time to get paid for it, Amy grinned. That sounds amazing. It does, doesn't it? 6 months later, James and I were officially divorced. He kept his retirement account and his car. I kept everything else. Carol disappeared 2 weeks after moving out, taking with her James's credit cards, his checkbook, and about $50,000 in cash that he'd been keeping in a safe deposit box. James is living in a small apartment now and working, with a therapist to understand how he fell for such an elaborate con. Amy and Marcus come to visit every week. We're closer now than we've been in years. And me? I'm sitting in my beautiful home office, in the house that I saved from being stolen, running a successful interior design business that's booked solid for the next 6 months. Sometimes people ask me if I'm bitter about what happened, if I'm angry about the time I lost, the trust that was broken, the family that was nearly destroyed. The answer is no, because sometimes you have to lose everything you thought you had to discover what you actually have. And what I have is strength, independence, financial security, and the knowledge that I will never again allow anyone to treat me as less than I'm worth. My name is Catherine. I'm 58 years old, and this is the story of how I took my life back. And you know what? I'm just getting started.